So whenever you're ready.
Welcome to the unspoken truths of digital leadership, living the leadership values. So, I guess we'll talk about the unspoken truths of leadership, the dark side, and the learnings from dealing with conflict with integrity. And tonight, I have the pleasure to have Manny Wolfe, who I've been desperately trying to get onto this show forever. But he's here now, and I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely, man. I'm really glad to be here and to have this conversation.
Brilliant. Manny, let's go into a bit about yourself. Like, where did it all come to your journey in terms of where you are now?
Well, if we look at it through the lens of leadership, that was something that I tried to do from as young as I could remember. And I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know anything. One of the things that it's taken me a lifetime to really get clear on is that, left to my own devices, all I ever tried to do was bring people together and give them a meaningful experience. It's the kind of thing that is very hard to realize, that that's sort of your drive. It's very hard to figure out how to sell something like that because it's so abstract. But that is that is a foundation of leadership, right? It's like, you'll never be a leader without people who are willing to follow you, and you won't be a leader for long if you can't give people something meaningful. And so I think that through lots and lots of twists and turns, that's been my process, is trying to get to this point where I'll be taken seriously enough to lead. I'll be trusted enough to lead. I'll make people feel safe enough with me, all of those things. And I've done it through martial arts and through being a band leader and through creating a play. And now I do it through coaching and through teaching other people. So yeah, that's kind of the how I got here piece.
Just curious, what type of martial arts did you do?
I've done a lot of them, but I really went seriously in with Aikido and with Kosho Kempo for a little while. For a couple of years, I got very, very deep into Kosho. So those were the ones that I stuck with the most. But I really liked the punching and kicking styles, until I learned how to grab and twist, and then I liked grabbing and twisting better.
When you was as young as you remember, you said you like to include people in your activities. What was the reason being behind that?
I don't know. And that's what I think is cool about it. It was something that was in me from as young as I can remember. I think that there's a misunderstanding about any kind of leadership. I liked it best the way that Michael Gerber talked about it in the E-Myth books. He said people have this tendency to make entrepreneurs into rock stars and make leadership into this thing that is a cultural sort of badge. But the fact of the matter is, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And I think that that's why so few people do it, and so few people out of that subset do it well. It requires constant self-assessment. It requires the ability to commit to an action while doubting yourself. So there's these really kind of nuanced and hard to wrap our head around kind of pieces within what we call leadership. Yeah.
So I always find it fascinating when people think leadership is just a title.
Yeah.
Where you automatically get leadership when you become, a manager or some sort of CEO or something like that, and that becomes leadership. And it's like, no, that's not really a leadership. Not from what my experience anyway. I've always seen leadership as a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
You choose to bring people together. You choose to include everyone, you choose to support people, and you choose to try and inspire people and
Yeah.
get them involved. And it's never about, oh, I'm doing this because I want to be recognized with a badge or an achievement. I do it because I love bringing people together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you make a good example of what we're sold as leadership, which is get into a position of management or become a C-suite executive. So I guess there's a difference between being in charge of people and what we would call leadership, right? One of them is a very demanding spiritual discipline. The other is what you do for a paycheck. And they don't necessarily have anything in common. I'm sure that many people listening, especially if you're of the early end of the Gen X generation or the end of the Boomer generation, you will have had a manager at some point in time who was in no way a better person than you. Like no matter what you use to measure, these were just low value people. But somehow they stuck it out like at a restaurant or a hardware supply store or something, trivial like that, and became managers. And you will have experienced the abuse of power in these tiny little positions. That's the misunderstanding of leadership. That's like it. I was also in jail before, and more than once. And I can tell you that within the jails, the security guards really had, a lot of them had that same quality. Like, these are people that I could look in their, not all of them, of course, but some of them I could look right in their face and see you were bullied as a kid. You've got a vendetta. You got a chip on your shoulder, and you don't care who you take it out on. Those people, whether they're security guards or managers, and those people you want to cross the street to avoid. You don't want those people in your life. However, someone who displays true leadership, Steve Jobs is a great example, wasn't even a likable guy by all accounts, and yet people would take a bullet for him. They'd march to their death for him because he really had the kind of leadership that he had was visionary, but he really had leadership. People knew he was going to take them somewhere meaningful. They knew they were part of something, that he's one of the few people in the modern era who really did change the world.
Yeah.
So,
despite his, I think it's people say conflicts or his the way he treats people. He said that people said. Yeah. I mean, when you're a visionary of that size and that magnitude, and you're creating something that's going to be, I guess, changing the world. Yeah. Sometimes you do have to have those kind of conflicts or tough conversations in which people would probably just think, oh, that's very challenging or demanding, and they probably could take it the wrong way. They may take it personally, right? They would probably say, oh, you're just taking it out on me because I have a very solid point or things like that. But maybe on the bigger picture of what Steve sees is it might just be off path. Not on the same track as where the vision's going.
Well, I think Jobs, I think Musk, I think probably Bezos, although he's not as public. I think Disney, although he was perhaps the rarest of all of them because of the type of charisma he had. But all of these people, they understood something. It's clear by what they produced that they understood something. There can be, and we don't all get this, even if you are in possession of what people would call true leadership skills, true visionary skills, we don't all get this opportunity. But sometimes those talents and skill sets will intersect with a mission and a vision, and I hate to say this, but a why that's so big. And what I don't think the person on the ground, so to speak, understands is that if you're trying to bring dreams to life, or if you're trying to change the way we interact with technology forever, or if you're trying to take us to Mars, it's a bigger mission than whether or not somebody disagrees with you. You laugh because you know what I mean, but it's so funny when you see people criticize Elon Musk.
Yes, that's
my feeling most of the time is you don't have the size to criticize someone like that. So what if he's unpleasant sometimes? Because this is bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like he employs what? I don't know, 40,000 people. You don't. I don't. He has a stated life mission of getting us to be interplanetary while simultaneously transitioning us off of fossil fuels and allowing us, as if that weren't enough, to engage at a rapid data rate with AI. You know, you can't judge him the same way you judge the Facebook coach who calls himself a leader.
Absolutely true.
I mean, you can judge him that way, but you utterly, profoundly, tragically miss the point.
Yeah, those are the people I just ignore nowadays. But
sure, I mean, yeah. Sometimes, most of the time, I ignore them. Every now and then, I step in and I defend my buddy Elon.
Well, yeah.
Every now and then I just have to, bitch slap somebody up and down the beltway for it. Most of the time I just ignore it. But yeah, it's like when we're talking about people at that level of vision, I don't think the guy who punches a clock and works a 9-to-5 job, with no disrespect to that's admirable. I don't think you really get the level that someone like that is operating on. So to say Elon Musk is not a nice guy to be around, was Nikolai Tesla a nice guy to be around? Do we know? Was Thomas Edison a nice guy to be around? At the end of the day, does it matter? You know?
It's the end result that created that matters, though. Yeah,
and I'm not saying you get a pass on being a decent human just because you feel you're a visionary leader, but what I am saying is that there's a certain element of leadership that is forfeiting other things to the bigger mission.
Yeah.
And that's something not everyone's comfortable with.
And that's just handling with the tension, but also handling being, I guess, misunderstood. Be okay with being misunderstood, because there's a bigger mission in place. And that's the case. So your journey, Manny, let's go a bit deep into your journey with what you do in coaching and how you got to where you are through after your. What was it like in jail and the learnings you got from that? Must be.
I learned I didn't want to go back. So that stuff was just, that was part of a misspent childhood, a misspent youth, really. It's the way that I was raised and the way that I was brought up. I was sort of taught from the beginning to not fit into society. And so the people that I found community with and the people that would take me in were the outlaws and the criminals. And so that's who I hung out with. And so I hung out with them and I became them.
Yeah.
I was never very good at it. And so, I got in a lot of trouble. But that, I don't know how much that even informs my life anymore. I got to be honest with you. It's a great story and it makes for great podcasting, but I don't know how much it really informs my life anymore.
But what's your decision to change from that?
It was the moment where I found myself discussing hunting someone down and killing them.
Right.
And that was a wake-up call. That was I don't care what I have to do, I'm not doing this. I found myself in a situation where I was holding a gun and making plans to go hunt someone down. And that was it. I was like, I'm going to disappear from this whole life.
Yeah.
I'm going to be not afraid of whatever comes next because I'm not doing this. So that's what sparked the change.
Mm-hmm. And then what did you do to change that path? Did you?
I ran home to my mommy. I really did. I left the town. I left the friends. I vanished from everything without saying a word.
Mm-hmm.
I just disappeared. I got a ride back to the city my mother lived in and my family lived in.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then I went through years and years and years and years of trying to figure out how I could have ever come to such a spot in the first place. You know, I engaged in a rigorous program of self-development and self-awareness, I think, more than anything. I didn't ever set out to become a coach. I didn't ever set out to become a mentor. I didn't know any of those things even really existed. I just knew that I couldn't keep living in the city I was living in, doing drugs, drinking all the time, hanging out with criminals. I just knew I had to change. You know, a lot of the rest of it has been, sometimes it feels like just a leaf floating down the stream. Other times it feels like being guided by some sort of divine plan. And those two things feel very similar to each other, you know?
Yes.
But so over the course of years, I started to develop a little bit of trust, noticing that anytime things were hard, I came through it and was better off than I started. Kind of developed a little bit of trust that maybe I don't always know what's happening, and maybe there's another hard time around the corner, but every time I have one of those, things get better. And I started developing a way to pull lessons out of those moments, and then started getting the opportunity to teach those lessons. You know, when I wrote my book and started my first podcast, and I came into the coaching space.
Yeah, I love that you said self-awareness, because that's the realm most people still shy away from. Yeah,
I would definitely agree with that. I think there's a lot of marketing and a lot of slick hype around personal improvement and self-development.
Yeah.
And I think that when people bump up against the ugly truth that it's hard, you know, that's why more people don't do it. There's a part of it where you just have to be a street fighter. There's a part of growing and developing where you're not going to do it without bloody knuckles and chipped teeth. You know, you just aren't. Nobody does. So being ready for that, being willing to accept that, you know, being willing to accept the bruises is, I don't know of any other way to do it, man. You know?
No, I agree, because I've been through that journey, and it is brutal, but I always say it's worth it.
I mean, what's the alternative, right? To be aware that you're not happy where you are, but not to change? That seems to me like hell on earth. That seems like living in a prison of sorts, you know?
Prison of your own mind.
Yeah.
As I like to call it.
That's what it feels like to me. So I'd much rather push through. I'd much rather, you know, like my sort of, one of my beliefs or mottos or whatever is like, win, lose, or draw, I want to know that I gave everything I had to what I want to do, what I want to become. And yeah.
How did you make the decision to become the coach or mentor?
I really fell into it. I really fell into it. Yeah.
Interesting.
It goes like this. I met the girl that would become my wife.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Before she was my wife, I would try to show off and impress her with all the horrible stories of my childhood, because I got really good at using those to impress people. And everybody would always react like, oh my God, you know, and I'd get this really wonderful hit of dopamine because they'd be so shocked and impressed. And I was trying that on her, and she just looked at me and she just said, you have to write this all down. You have to write a book, you know? And I was sort of taken aback, and I'll never forget that moment. You know, I said, I always thought I'd write a book, but I wanted to wait until I was more successful, till I had achieved something. And so she said, just the fact that you're here, just the fact that you're alive, that you're no longer a criminal, and that you're trying to be a good man and a good parent is success. And I didn't have anything to say, so I literally, like, I couldn't respond, so I went home and started writing. I mean, she just cornered me. She just shut me up. You know, she took all of the all of the showy, braggy, you know, look at what I've been through, and I just was left with none of it. And so I wrote my life story out, and I did it in a way. My goal was never to make myself a hero or a victim in telling the story. I think that's really important, because I got pimp slapped there because I was trying to make myself a hero and a victim and get, you know, sympathy and awe from her, and she just wasn't having it, you know. And so I sort of just took that into the process. And then I have this book, but nobody knows me. And what do you do with a book when nobody knows you? Well, my mind was still in the 80s, you know, when you just submit it to publishers until someone says yes. But that was like, that's not what we do anymore. So I managed to land a 15-minute call with one of the editors, the high-up editors of like Penguin or something, like a really big publishing house. I don't know how I even got the call. And so the guy said, you got to build a platform. He said, how big's your audience? I said, I don't know. I didn't know anything about it. So I said, how do you build a platform? He said, I would recommend a podcast. Mm-hmm. So I started a podcast, and that's how everything started.
Wow. That's powerful.
That's how it went.
So you fell into it.
Yeah, well, I spent all this time and energy creating this podcast that I thought was going to be so meaningful, you know, where I was going to take people from all walks of life and all levels of success and have conversations with them, hoping to reveal our shared humanity. And I had all this, like, you know, I was going to change the world with this thing. I started publishing the podcasts, and people started reaching out and saying, can you teach me how to sound like you? Nothing to do with my message whatsoever. So the first money I ever made was giving a guy from the South here in America, you know, with a thick accent and a Southern drawl, giving him voice lessons so he'd sound better on his microphone. That was literally the first money I ever made online. And I'll never forget showing my wife like $397 for 4 hours of work, you know.
That's incredible. That is.
It was really incredible. And it was also incredible that I thought that $397 was good for 4 hours of work. You know, if you're listening to this and you're thinking that is good, let me just tell you, the world is your oyster. You can do much better than that.
But it's having that that confidence to know that it can happen, right?
Yeah, and you got to learn somehow.
That opens up doors and beliefs and confidence in yourself that you could just take it.
Absolutely.
To the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how I got from there to here.
How did you manage? Did you have any things that how did you get rid of your old habits that wasn't serving you? Because I must have taken a lot of work, like a lot of work.
I did it slowly. I did it painfully. It was hard, man. I just never want to be a voice that in any way sells the magic pill, you know, and I probably could be making 10 times more money if I was, but I never want to be that guy. For me, it's just a relentless process of self-examination. I use different methods when I find something about me I want to change. I like cognitive behavioral therapy. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that people don't talk about with that particular therapy is as you do it, it gets quicker and quicker. So in the beginning, it was like I'd find a habit or a belief or a repeated idea in my head, and I'd really have to just constantly talk about its opposite, right? That's what cognitive behavioral therapy is. It's really just challenging your ideas. It's recognize them, then challenge them. In the beginning, it was really slow, but if you like that approach, it can get very quick over time. You just become willing to go, you know what? Fuck it. I just don't want to act like that anymore. I like journaling, which I think is a form of reinforcing whatever it is you want to, you want to believe, you want to feel. I like, lately I'm really into binaural beats, really into those. Love that stuff.
Tell me more about that. What
Sure. So the fundamental idea is that it's very healthy for our brains to get into that, what is it? The low alpha, beta, gamma. There's a certain brainwave function that's really slow, and that's where meditation is supposed to take you.
The frequency. Yeah,
the frequencies. And with binaural beats, they're actually not beats. It's a misnomer. They're just these like washes of sound. Mm-hmm. But they're at frequencies that stimulate those brain frequencies. And so before I would take meditation and it sort of almost was like napping. I just lay down and I get really slow and calm, and it's good. I think creative people should nap. Adding in the binaural beats, and it's like after 40 minutes I come out of it and I feel like my cells just had a shower. It's just a really cool thing. And I feel like it helps me with clarity, it helps me with simplicity. It really feels amazing. So I'm a huge fan of that. What else? I think those are the big ones for me. I think those are really the ones I like. But again, not so much for you, Jono, but for the people listening, there's that element of it that is blood and knuckle. Even when it stops being so hard to institute change in your own life, I don't think I ever want to give up. As it looks now, that part of me that is not enlightened, that part of me that is not so spiritual, right? That part of me that is like primal, because that's what I just need, the connection to that. That's what I think allows. I was in a conversation on my podcast 2 days ago with a friend of mine. I'll give him a shout out here. His name's Kyrie Oliver. Really bright guy. Young guy too. Anyway. And we were talking about whether a human being can be truly good without having the capacity for being truly evil. Whether you can be a peaceful man without having the capacity for violence. And I think that dichotomy talks about what I'm talking about. No matter how sort of quote unquote evolved I get in my growth, I always want to maintain my connection to that part that is just like willing to go into the mud. I just feel like that it's the backbone that allows all the sort of higher level growth to happen.
I can relate to that one.
Yeah.
Only because as most of my peer group would describe me as, Jono is always so calm.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of me is that I'm spontaneous. I love high adrenaline, bungee jumping and roller coaster rides and all those sorts of adrenaline stuff.
Yeah.
But I love the pump, like the heavy lifting, the grind, the tough muddler, the Spartan race, and all of the grueling tough stuff. Because I believe that's what it takes to build the resilience and the mental toughness.
100% agree with you. Yeah. I think especially for me, it was heavy weights. That was where I found a real sort of potent spiritual thing.
Yeah.
It's just that there's something so simple and honest about it, right? Either you do it or you don't, and there's no in between. I really had developed a whole ritual around my heavy weightlifting, a whole like breathing and focus, and there's just something so pure about it. I imagine it's what comedians feel like in a way. Like there's no faking it. Either you get the laugh or you don't, right? You're up on stage in front of 2,000 people and either it works or it doesn't, and there's no there's no spin you can put on that. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. The especially with weights.
Especially with weights, I find that I usually get the most ideas from lifting or during a lift. It's just like, where did that idea come from? Let me just do my lift and I'll just jot it down on my on my keypad on my mobile or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I really get that. I really do. In your history with inner conflicts, how would you go about that? Dealing with those kind of internal thoughts and things that come up now and then?
Well, there are different levels of internal conflict. I can speak with some certainty and some confidence on this. And it's so interesting. We find ourselves talking about this over and over again. I think for me, all of the internal conflict has ultimately been solved by the side of me that I sort of want to be victorious, dominating the other side. It really is like, find it and kill it. Seriously, it's just and that's that primal thing again, and that's that part of me again that I think is so important. And I see some people talking about it, and I'm glad they do, but largely in the leadership community and the spiritual community, it's sort of glossed over, But if I can't lead the hunt as well as the team meeting, I don't know that I'm going to be as effective and powerful. So it's a matter of a lot of the deeper conflicts, internal conflicts I've had. I've really envisioned the challenge of solving them, and the solving them is like grabbing it by the root and ripping it out of the ground. I really take a very aggressive approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like slaying the demon.
Kind of, yeah. It is sort of like
as they call it.
Demon. Yeah, choking the shit out of it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean that's what works for me. And I think a lot of that comes from having to fight my way out of bad situations as a kid a lot. Knowing the consequences of not being able to fight myself out of those situations. An ass whooping leaves a very, very powerful impression on a person. And I've had a lot of them. So I think if you had been with me through my childhood, it wouldn't surprise you that this is my sort of internal worldview. I'm not like this with the outside world. I don't need to prove to anybody anything, although for many years I did. But internally, it's like survival of the fittest. It's who has the most will, who I want to be, or this challenge.
Yeah, that's the reason I bring that up, is because each one of us have that different internal conflict that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and we just have to find what works for us.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that go slay the demon, which works for them, with like you. Then there's for me is balancing it, is dancing with the demon.
Yeah.
But that's me internally for me, and that's just because of my history. I probably did not have a rougher history as you would have. I'm sure if I had probably gone through the same journey as you probably have, I would probably have the same approaches. Yeah. Do or die.
Yeah. A lot of times that's a really good way to put it.
It's literally that. So I could really understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
And when you're making your decisions in leadership, your values, where do they derive from?
Where do they derive from? I think a lot of it, and actually I'm having to learn how to pull this back and blend it with some other things more lately. Right now, I'm in a leadership position in a team of people that in their areas of expertise are far more skilled than I am. So it's a really, really unusual feeling if you haven't done it before.
I've seen where you're going with this as well. I've been watching you with that.
Yeah.
Carry on. Please carry on.
it used to be that the primary sort of leading edge of my approach was make everyone feel safe, make everyone feel good, make everyone feel, and what it actually was protect people from ever feeling like I used to feel when I felt vulnerable, when I felt unsafe. And that's noble, but it's not well-rounded enough, right? Because not everybody has that experience. And so if you bring that energy primarily into a moment of leadership and it's not a good fit with someone else's energy, you get this weird kind of wobble like this. Yeah. It doesn't quite line up. Mm-hmm. And so what I look at now is just trust that I have the accumulated life experience. Trust, like for me, a weird thing that I'm doing now is really sinking into trusting that I'm the visionary. Even in my ears still, that sounds grandiose. It sounds like I'm patting myself on the back. But I can't fulfill the role that I'm in now without just trusting that I'm the connector, I'm the visionary, I'm the guy who, whose job it is to do those things. Take these incredibly talented people, like just mind-blowingly talented people, and synthesize all of their strengths. It's not going to work if I'm like, oh, let's protect everybody and make sure everybody feels okay, right? That's not enough.
And let's touch more upon that area, because
sure,
it's in the education area, isn't it?
In a big, big way.
Yeah. So we can talk about that. I'm happy for you to talk about that as well, because I was watching you behind from just afar, just seeing you pop up now and then with those feeds, and I was just like, man, he's really pushing through with this.
Yeah.
It's like possession of, I don't know how you say it. It's like you're just thriving upon it every time you're talking.
Yeah.
You're having these people on there about education and how you could change it and what else can happen. I was like, I need to get more people involved with Manny on this subject. Yeah. That's where I brought in was it Sam Monet?
Oh yeah, Sam. You brought him onto your show?
No, I brought him onto your show, right?
Oh, that's right. You made that connection for me.
I connected you guys because you was on the education, so is he, and he's doing massive things in his area. I was like, you two need to just connect and just get on with it.
For sure, yeah. And Sam, if you're listening, buddy, all the respect for you and your mission and your work. Holy cow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for us, it went kind of like this. I'd say two of my three, top rock star clients, the ones that are so good that you feel like whether you were there or not, they were going to find a way to succeed, and you just happened to be the catalyst. Two of them are in the education space. One of them has an online portal, and I helped her grow it from a few students to 50 or 60, and she put in structures and other coaches underneath her to help facilitate. We did some really great things. And then on the other hand, I've got this other one who has a physical school in Texas. And she's a visionary. She is a brilliant educator. There's just no other way to talk about it that is accurate. She's gifted in what she does. They both are. And so I'm kind of sitting there and then coronavirus hits and I pulled back from selling because it didn't feel right to me. No judgment to any of my many, many coaching friends who kept selling all the way through. For me, it just didn't feel right. And so I started asking myself the question, what can I do right now to serve? And I started my what turned into the Manny Wolfe show, my current podcast and video show. And I journaled on this and I prayed on it, not prayed, but meditated on it. And I just was like, the thing will show itself when the time is right. For now, just show up and serve, show up and serve, show up and serve, add value to people. And don't worry, because the idea will come. And the idea was connecting these two clients. And within the space of one call, we were like, we have to, we're watching schools basically shut down all over the world and clumsily try to implement distance learning. I'm looking at my daughter in my house who's now going to distance learning, and she's done Zoom for 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, instead of a 5-day-a-week school schedule. And I'm like, it's right here in front of me. We got to do something about this. And so what we're doing essentially is, and we don't even have like the sound bite dialed in yet. That's how fast things are moving and how new it is. But we are starting a private school whose ultimate goal is akin to what Elon Musk is doing with Tesla. He wants to transition the world off of fossil fuel and use Tesla as proof it can work. We want to set up a high quality private school quality education, free to all.
Wow.
So you don't have to struggle with public school anymore. You don't have to put your kids in a school system that you question. You don't have to worry that schools are still training to the Industrial Revolution model. You know, they're basically warehouses that create employees. So what happens when that happens? Well, you miss the entrepreneur, you miss the leader, you miss the artist, you miss the small business person. You only really get the study to the test, Common Core over here in the US, state and federal standards, recitation and memorization kind of learning, which there's no argument that holds water that that's not an outdated and damaging educational model. So we thought, why can't we just embrace technology completely and stop pretending we're not heading towards a completely technological future, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Can we please stop pretending that 15 years from now, we're not going to have a world that we can't even recognize? So let's embrace it. Let's use technology to teach. And what it looks like so far is it's a hybrid of in-person and online learning. Mm-hmm. We're going to be using augmented reality. We're going to be changing it so that you have flexible start times. We're going to be creating not apprenticeships, but collaborations with like the tech sector and different sectors, so that kids can start matriculating towards what their interests and skills naturally develop long before they get out of high school. So if you're a CEO at we'll use Tesla again, right? They have to hire the best and the brightest in the world. You know, Elon Musk was quoted several years ago as saying, we're not even building what we need to build yet. We're building the tech that allows us to build what we need to build.
Yeah.
That's revolutionary thinking. So what if we can come in as a high school and say, okay, let's take 2 or 3 people from your team, you fund the process, and we'll create a pathway so that right out of high school, you have access to people who want to work for you, who know what you need and are ready, rather than 4 years of college and then 2 years of somewhere else just to get almost to where you need them to be.
Wow.
Right? So this is the kind of scope that we're thinking on. And then I think the most important thing, and now it's going to start as a premier private school. It's going to be expensive. We're not going to be able to give it to everyone right away. But ultimately, with alumni support, with support from the different, economic sectors and everything, we envision having all the funding be outside of the parents, so that phase 3 is all over the world. You can get a top quality education for free.
Wow.
That's what's up.
Wow. That is incredible. See, I only had glimpses of this, and I was just like, I just knew Manny was up to something really, really big. I didn't know what, but now I do, and that's just amazing. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah. The coolest thing for me was, we have this pressure, especially in the entrepreneurial world, that we have to know our why. We have to know our mission. We have to know our vision. Let me be the first to tell you that should not preclude you from action. I mean, if you're anything like me, you spent a lot of time spinning around because you didn't feel like you knew your why, right? You spent a lot of time doing things besides taking action, learning how to serve, making money, growing in your field, because you felt like you had to have this external thing first. You absolutely don't have to have it right now today. I'll talk about Michael Gerber's story a little bit, the E-Myth guy again. He was asked, how did you know you wanted to build the E-Myth Academy? And he laughed. He said, I didn't know. I had no idea. The work started presenting itself little by little, and it was elegant. It was challenging. It was meaningful. So I did it, and now here I am. You don't need to know your why first.
That's the thing that most people get hung up on, isn't it?
I think a lot. Yeah, I think that's a big, big sort of cart before the horse kind of thing that we experience, right? The horse has to work, guys.
I'm glad you talked about that, because that was my next question was, what would you suggest people to do if they were still stuck in their way and really wanting to do something they're really passionate about, like something they really love and enjoy it, without knowing the why? Because that's still oftentimes the thing that just stop people. Is you go, oh, I don't know why I'm doing this. It's like, well, if you love it, you just do it.
And you can even go back one step before that, and you just have to be taking action in an interesting direction. You know, I think that's the piece that will lead you to some sort of, well, let's put it this way. That's going to lead you to more awareness than not taking action. I know in my life, I've had, I don't know, a dozen whys that aren't all the same as each other. And I thought each one of them was it, you know, and you know, now, only now do I have something that I go, not only is this real, not only are we making this happen, but this is bigger than me. This is something I will die, and this won't be done yet, right? This is a legacy type level mission. And so that means that all my other dozen absolutely, confirmed, convinced, this is my mission, this is my why, we're wrong. So we can't be too hard on ourselves about that. Taking action frees up creativity. Taking action frees up inspiration, insight. Taking action is the thing.
And that's one thing about law of attraction, wasn't it? The secret of law of attraction. Which the missing piece, which everyone is not doing, is taking action.
Right. Yeah. John Assaraf says law of attraction only works with the law of Goya, which is get off your ass.
But it's true. If you don't take action on it, nothing would happen, and you won't attract what you want because you're not taking action.
Yeah, you can't. Action is what the universe responds to.
I love that. I love that. So, Manny, if people wanted to connect you, where could they go? Because I'm
just
aware
come
of
to my Facebook group. It's called the Manny Wolfe Group.
It's an absolutely amazing group as well, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I say you want to learn more, just come join the group.
Fantastic. Thank you, Manny, so much for your time and your insights. I much appreciate it. And finally got you on here as well. It is
absolute pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Manny. We'll speak to you soon.